Welcome, everyone, to the Dying Your Way podcast series. I am so honored today to introduce you to our guest, Trew. I want to tell a little story about how I met Lee. I was a featured speaker on a global collaborator meeting, and of course, the topic I was talking about was death and dying. And afterwards, people were sharing, and Lee told his personal story. I had never met Lee. I didn't know anything about Lee. I heard his story and it just stopped me in my tracks. It humbled me, and I reminded myself that nobody knows anything about death and dying more than the people who actually experience it. And Lee has been gracious enough to come on to the podcast and tell his story. And it's a powerful story, and we'll just get into it. So thank you so much. And Lee, tell me how you're doing today.
I'm doing pretty good. We're getting a lot of rain at the moment, which is a nice change. So yeah, we've just been having some cozy time in the caravan.
Rain in Australia, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, it's a really great thing. Yeah. So yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Well, one of the things that I would like to know before we really launch into the story first is tell us a little bit about your daughter Blaze and her life.
Wow. So she was born in 2010, and she had beautiful red hair. Neither of us, me or her mum, had red hair, which is a pleasant surprise. But she had a red-haired grandmother on her mum's side, and then and also a red-haired grandma on my side too. So it was a surprise that she sort of lived up to her name, Blaze.
Yeah.
With the red hair. She was a really beautiful child. I mean, all children are amazing, and all parents think that theirs are pretty special. Yeah, she could kind of blow me away on a daily basis. So one thing that sticks out in my mind is a memory of us in the London Underground. You know, those underground trains they have in London.
Oh yeah.
We went past a busker one day. It was doing some nice saxophone music, and it was rush hour. Everyone was marching past, and she started dancing. Blaze started dancing to his saxophone music, and the way she was moving her hands it kind of entranced that many people. It sort of stopped. It made a blockage in the rush of commuters. People were stopping to watch her. It's one of the images that kind of sticks out in my memory.
And then, how old was she when she was diagnosed? And tell us a little bit about her illness.
When she was about 3, we felt a lump in her stomach, sort of a large lump, felt like the size of a lemon, and took her to hospital. The doctors were a bit worried, and they said, "Okay, actually, we think this is cancer." Did an operation where they removed it, and they said, "We think this is probably the end of it. This seemed to be inert, this tumor, and so come back in 6 months for a checkup. But other than that, it seems good. We don't even need to do chemo or radio or anything like that." And then about 3 months later, she came down with what seemed like a cold and was slightly short of breath. And we thought maybe pneumonia or something, because when she was having difficulty breathing, and took her to hospital, and they discovered that her whole torso was just filled with tumors, the size of lemons and grapes. And when they put her under general anesthetic to do a fuller scan, the x-rays had shown the first masses, and then when they said we need to do a deeper scan, we'll put her under general anesthetic, and her lungs collapsed, and she had to go on life support, and she was unconscious for 2 weeks before we ended up realizing that we'd come to the end of the line and it was time to switch off the machine.
What was that like for your family and your wife, and for her, certainly yourself?
The thing that I'm always really grateful for is that for Blaze, it was not such a big thing. There wasn't a lot of suffering for her. There wasn't prolonged chemotherapy. Um, the hardest bit was really that first operation where we were having to take her to the hospital and they were doing tests, and she was just an incredibly spirited and kind of autonomous child, and she really resented people sticking thermometers under her armpits, or having to hold her down so they could take her pulse, or take blood samples. And that was some of the toughest times, getting her prepped for that operation. And then the times when we had to keep her in bed for a little bit after they took that first tumor out. But really, in the weeks leading up to her death, there was no real inkling that she was on the way out. And the last words I heard her say as her and her mum left for the hospital was, she said, "Mummy, are we going on an adventure?" So from her perspective, it was a beautifully smooth transition out of the world. She set up a really great exit for herself, which I'm really grateful for.
Yeah.
And for us, it just sort of blasted us open, I guess. Like, the way I think about it now is, I feel like she kind of broke my heart open into life. That's the enduring feeling is. There was one time I was really in the depths of grief and just feeling, wow, my heart is actually broken. And then realizing, it's broken open, like really abiding in that sense of the brokenheartedness. There was a real sense of expansion and vulnerability that was really a feeling of being more deeply alive than I'd felt before, more sort of deeply in the world. This thing of being in love with a mortal creature and having to feel the love and then the loss of that. From the perspective that I'm standing in, feels like a blessing, and I'm really grateful for the 3 years I did get with her. Yeah. The larger story is that Blaze's mother was diagnosed with breast cancer a few days after she discovered that she was pregnant with Blaze. So she went from, "I'm pregnant, yay," a few days later, "Oh, I have breast cancer." And the doctors at the time said, "Oh, this is the kind of breast cancer, or this is the kind of cancer that is gonna, the pregnancy hormones are going to be like steroids for this cancer. You need to abort immediately to save your life. It's not possible for you to have this child." And Gina is a strong woman, thankfully, and she sort of did some soul searching, and she just sort of felt like there was a way for her to have this child and be alive. And then part of that way involved having chemotherapy during the second trimester of pregnancy. There was a moment when the circulating cancer cells in her body went very high, and the doctors were very worried, and they said, we really think you should have chemotherapy even though you're pregnant right now. It's not a big deal. Women do it. Sometimes the baby is born a little bit smaller than usual, but the baby is kept safe by the placenta. But it looks like now, in hindsight, the pediatric doctor said that it's possible that the chemotherapy might have seeded that tumor in Blaze's body. And so it feels to me like she could have had no time on this planet. We could have listened to the doctors first of all, but we did get those 3 years. And then right from the get-go, there was the sort of the seed of her exit from this world. And the only way I can sort of make sense of it, the story I can tell myself that feels right and feels compatible with life, is that she just needed 3 years. She came here for 3 years. 3 years was all she needed. Yeah.
How is Gina?
How is she?
Yes.
She's great now. She's well. She's great. We separated a few years after Blaze died, very amicably. I was just clear that I wanted to be a dad again. I was desperate to be a father again. And Gina by that time was just too old. She was 12 years older than me, and her body was, in her words, preparing for elderhood, and my body was still still adamant that I was ready for parenthood. And so we're still really great friends, best friends really. We run a business together, we run programs together, and my current partner and wife, Hannah, and Gina get on really well, almost too well. They gang up on me sometimes, which
That.
I feel incredible, which I love. It feels great. I feel
Yeah,
lucky for that.
yeah.
Yeah.
When you love someone, you never stop loving them, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm really grateful to Gina. It's just a massive testament to her, the hugeness of her heart and generosity, that we can still be friends and work together, and that she can be grateful for my presence in her life still. And she's my current, my next daughter, Tiger. She's Tiger's godmother. So
Tiger, I love that name. I
yeah.
love that. So through the passing of Blaze, I mean, you already talked about some of your heart breaking open and the profound effect that that's had on how you maneuver through the world right now in a better and uplifting way. Um,
Mm,
you have a business, the Blue Gum Bushcraft, which
yeah,
is a mentoring program. So you're working with children a lot. I guess you work
yeah.
with adults in teaching them wild, living in the wild.
Nature connection. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So are there lessons that you've learned through your life experience, really relatively young life experience, that you can share with others that you work with? Maybe not specifically, but on a subtextual level, how has that changed you in work?
Um, well, I mean, in a really practical, surface level way, the work that I do now was as a pretty direct result of Blaze's death, because I had been running certain kinds of programs where we took kids for the day and brought them back again, and they were small groups mostly. And then after Blaze died, I said to myself, "Wow, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I'm not sure I can work with kids anymore."
Mm.
Um, and I was in a really I was in that contracted grief place where I was like not sure if I really actually was on board with this whole living thing, and if I actually liked the universe and life in general, if that life was actually a benevolent place. So from that kind of grumpiness, I said, well, if I'm going to do this thing, if I'm going to carry on working with kids, it has to be on my terms. It's going to be the most the most reward for the least effort. What would be the easiest and the most convenient way for me to work with kids? And the answer I came up with was, well, rather than take these kids away, the parents can just bring them to me, and they'll stick around, and we'll do a camp in a field, and I'll take the kids for a few hours of the day, and I'll just hand them back. That's what I'm prepared to do. And so we we did that for the first couple of camps. And I said, I'm just inviting friends for this too as well. I'm not sure if this is viable, so we'll just say, hey, this is friends coming to hang out. Maybe I'll do some stuff with the kids. And then it went really well. It went great, and I was really pleased to find out, actually, yeah, it works. I can still spend time with kids and feel connection with them and feel grateful for them. Um, and and then what the camps that we do now grew out of that really organically. The next time parents said, oh, can we bring our friends? Then as it became more work, we introduced more systems, and things became bigger, and now really we have a village of 150 people for a couple of weeks in a field. And yeah, that shape of things never would have come about if it hadn't have been for that grief process I was going through. That really made me get clear on what I actually want, what would be really great, and not feel like a chore.
Well, I mean, I love how you talk about that broken place and breaking you open and really
Mm,
opening new doors that you maybe didn't even think of. But could you
yeah.
talk a little bit more about your grief process and what that was like for you, and really what you would recommend for someone going through something similar?
Yeah. Um, I was really lucky because I had gone through an experience a few years before everything with Blaze, where I'd spent a year on my own in the bush, and had gone through a sort of a disintegration inside. I had felt like I was going crazy living out there in the bush, and part of that going crazy was just having massive emotions just turn up out of nowhere and just surge through me: rage or grief or terror or shame, loathing, despair. And they were so big that I couldn't really even pretend that I could control them. And so I just sort of had to just express. I just end up howling at the top of my lungs, or singing at the top of my lungs, or shouting, or, there'd be a particular word that would really sort of express what I was feeling, or a sentence, and I'd just start shouting the word or the sentence over and over again. And it meant that when the huge emotion of those feelings of pain and loss after Blaze died, when they would come through, it's like those channels had already, that the groove had been worn a little bit, and I sort of knew, I felt like I knew how to do this thing. Okay, yeah, it wasn't intimidating to me in a weird way. And so as much as possible, a lot of the times it would be driving, or I'd take myself into the bush, anytime I could, or sometimes I'd just go and shut myself in a toilet cubicle and do some silent screaming. But whenever something started to shift, I felt like my homework, my responsibility was to just sort of express it and move it out. Whether it was cursing the universe, cursing God, swearing and shouting and cursing God, or just feeling absolutely victimized, feeling absolutely bereft, absolutely agonized, howling at the top of my lungs while I was driving the car, and sort of, I had this feeling of, there's almost like there's a resonance point. If I sing, or if I shout, or if I say the right word, I'll get to the resonance. I'll unlock the heart of this feeling, and then the sort of the dam will really break, and I'll be able to move through and come out the other side. And I think my experience before living in the bush gave me faith that there was another side to come out of.
Yeah.
And because of that, I was able to, waves of grief would come crashing through, and then at first, it might be an hour that I'd be in that place, 2 hours maybe, but very quickly over time it became half an hour, 10 minutes even. They would pass quite quickly. And my experience of grief has been long periods of feeling, oh, actually I feel surprisingly okay. It's weird. Is there something wrong? Maybe I'm a sociopath, or maybe I'm really in denial or something. Maybe I should be feeling worse. And then blam, okay, now I'm really not feeling okay. Now I really am feeling it, and I'm deep in the thick of it. But if I can sort of just surrender, if I really give myself over to diving into the heart of this thing, rather than trying to skip around the edges and getting too lost in the story of it, which was really the excruciating part. If I could dive in just to the physical feeling of this, very often I'd realize to myself, oh, actually how this feels in my body at a physical level is less than stubbing my toe or having a toothache. The real agony was coming from the psychological leverage that I was putting on myself, where I was saying, oh my God, I'll never see her again. Maybe a terrible wrongness has happened. My poor daughter, and all of the natural, of course, things, the natural thoughts. But I realized, if I can stay out of those thoughts as much as possible, or sort of let them be there, but stay with just the feeling, as if there's a feeling of something I had to pass, like an emotional turd I was trying to pass. not a very nice image, but something like that, and some kind of a blockage that I had to move through. Like diving into the story of it, and what that meant about me, or what that meant about Blaze, or what that meant about the world, or Gina's mother. For a long time, it was really hard for me not to blame Gina and feel like she shouldn't have had that chemo. The thought that kept on going through my head was, we poisoned Blaze. I stood by and I let them pump those chemicals into Gina that seeded a cancer in our unborn daughter. And that was that poisonous story had me on a hook for a long time, for many years. And it's only sort of just been in the past couple of years that I've been able to let go of that one and sort of feel into the bigger picture, and that idea of maybe she just came here for 3 years, and everything that happened was perfect and a gift. Took a long time to get there, and lots of times of not feeling like that, but I think I'm pretty much there now.
Have you had a sense of Blaze since she passed?
Yeah. Yeah, in lots of ways. And yeah, it's funny, there was a friend of mine, a really spiritual man, in the final days when we were realizing, okay, maybe we're gonna have to switch off this machine, it's time to stop praying for a miracle. he said to me, well, Lee, she'll always be a part of you. You just won't be able to pick her up anymore. And at the time, I just won't be able to pick her up. Just? I was like, I could actually literally strangle you for that just right now. What do you mean just? But the distance of years since then, she died in 2013, so it's been sort of 7 years now. I really see where he was coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easier to see.
People have the best intentions, you know. They do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, my husband, my husband David Haney passed away in 1985, and it was very sudden from a heart attack. And I was completely numb for years. I mean, so when I hear you talking about leaning into your feelings, letting them come out, you know, that I didn't have the tools now that I do now, and certainly that you seem to possess. And it was years, and a lot of therapy that came afterwards, because I just stuffed a lot of that, and I moved around in an emotional vacuum for such a long time. So, you know, and I also learned that grief is very individual. You know, people are going to do it differently.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's all okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Lee, I am so moved by you, and I am just so grateful that you are confident enough and generous enough to share your story with us, because I think there'll be people that listen to this that are in that stage of grieving, or do have to make the difficult decision that you had to make to remove your daughter from life support. And just to know that there is another side, you know, and that life is beautiful and worth living, even if it's for 3 years, you know?
Yeah.
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 Is there anything else you want to say before we go about this, or about anything really?
Well, but part of my work is the work that I do out of the bush is as a therapist and a parenting coach. And one of the stories I like to tell the parents that I'm working with is story I think of as the swimming lesson. Is it? Can I tell that story?
Sure, please.
So one day I was looking after Blaze for the weekend. Her mom was away, and we'd booked her in for these swimming lessons. And she was about 3 at this time, and swimming lessons was this big thing in her life. We'd gone to the swimming pool sometimes, and we see the big girls having swimming lessons. And so we said, one day you can do this too. And the day had come, but on this day she was sick. She had a cold, and I was thinking, oh God, now what do I do? This is terrible. We've been building this up for so long. She knows it's this day, and now she's got a cold. I'm worried if I take her to the pool now, it's just going to make it worse. What's the right thing to do? I feel completely torn. And it felt huge, you know, sort of on the horns of a dilemma. What do I do? And she comes down, she says, is it swimming lessons day today, Dad? And I said, yes, it is. But the thing is, you got this cold. I don't know if it's a good idea. And she said, I want to go. I said, well, we'll see. And I'd say, let's have breakfast, hoping she'll forget about it. But after breakfast, she rushes upstairs, comes back down again in her swimming costume. And she's sitting on this chair, kicking her legs and waiting for us to go to swimming lessons. So I cave in and I'm like, okay, let's go. Maybe it'll be okay. But I'm feeling really, really torn all the way. And then we turn up at the swimming pool, and I pick her up out of the chair, and her heart's beating quite fast and her breath is short in my ear. And I'm like, oh God, is this the right decision? I don't know. What's the right thing to do? I feel really torn. But we go inside and we get changed, and we turn up, and the woman who's running the class is this really big, powerful, loud-voiced Irish woman. She says, "Oh, well, hello, this must be Blaze. Come on, Blaze, come over here." And and Blaze she's had these like quite softly spoken, consensual liberal parents. She's not used to being spoken to like this. She's saying, "Okay, come over here, Blaze. You're gonna stand there." And she's not sure that she actually likes it. So she turns around to Daddy and she says, "Daddy, I want to go home now." And now I'm torn again. And I'm like, oh God, if I take her out of this now, I'm telling her the minute things get wrong, or the minute things get tough, we just quit. So I'm like, oh, I think it's gonna be okay, honey. Like, I think it's gonna be fine. And the matronly woman comes over to me. She says, I think it's better if Dad just leaves now. And I'm like, okay, she thinks I'm just one of those helicopter smothering parents. Maybe I am. I don't know. I feel completely torn here. But in the end, her will convinces me, and I turn around and I say, honey, I'll be right back in a minute. I'm going to leave you to the swimming lessons. I'll just be over there waiting. And she starts screaming. She's like, no, Daddy, reaching out to me. And as I'm walking away, my heart's pounding. And I'm thinking, oh God, is this trauma in process? Is this right now? I'm abandoning my daughter. She's going to not know why every time she goes past water as an adult, she feels neglected. And I go and hide behind a pillar, and I poke out, and sure enough, in about literally 30 seconds, she's doing all of the exercises along with the big girls, and she's having a great time, and my heart's exploding with pride. I'm like, oh my God, look at this little girl. She's being one of the big girls. I'm so proud of her. And afterwards, when it's done, I come over. She said, did you see me, Daddy? I was one of the big girls. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. I saw her. I was right over there. I was looking. I'm so sorry I had to walk away, even though when you were upset. And we go and have a shower. And in the shower, I'm still telling her, I'm saying, my honey, I'm so proud of you. You did so well. You're my brave and clever and strong, beautiful girl. I'm so proud to be your dada. So proud to be a dad. And we spent ages in this shower. We had this long shower. I don't know how long it was. She kind of half falls asleep on my shoulder. And we go home, and after that, the cold really kicks in a big way, and she doesn't really get out of bed. I'm just sort of bringing her food, and she just wants to read books. And there was a point when I was having to have a business call, and she was calling for more food, and I was like, oh my God, like this girl, like it's so difficult to be a parent right now. I was feeling really sort of grudging of her presence and having to look after her. And that was the night then that Gina came back, and she said, oh, her breath is really quite short. Maybe I should take her to the hospital. And they get in the car, and at first the car wouldn't start randomly for some reason. And Gina tries it again, and then it starts. And I hear Blaze say, the car just needed a rest. Clever, mummy. You gave the car a rest. And then as they pull off, Blaze says, so are we going on an adventure, mummy? And her mum says, yes, that's right, darling. And then a few hours later, I get the call where Gina says, hey, we're at the hospital. They've just done an x-ray, and they found her torso is full of white masses, and the doctors are looking really terrified. We're going to have to do a scan. And then a little bit later on that, I get another call saying, hey, they put her under general anesthetic. Her lungs have collapsed. She's on life support now. You need to come down here right now. And I love sort of the lesson of that day for me. You know, there were so many times when I was really buried up to the neck in the minutiae of the logistics of parenting. Do I take her to the swimming pool or not? Is this the right thing to do here or not? I feel so torn. Should we do this or not? Am I ever going to get to answer these emails? Am I ever going to get to do these business calls without being interrupted? And now, with the sort of the distance of her loss and everything that happened after that, the only thing that matters to me at all was that shower that we had, that connection time that we had, the time when I felt so close to her, and she was right there, and I was right there with her. And I do a lot of work with parents where they're in the same place, and I'm back in that place too, the crazy place. I think parenting makes us insane, because we get, it matters so much, and it's so easy to get caught up in these minutiae. And then it's only sometimes we get glimpses of the bigger perspective and realize actually none of that really makes a difference, actually, in the grand scheme of things. None of the little things that we get so caught up on really make a difference. It's those moments when we really feel close, and when we get to kiss them goodnight, when we look at them and we think, my God, look at this child who I've been gifted with. Or we hold them close in the shower, or we whisper to them as they're falling asleep. Those are the only things that actually matter.
You are a very young, wise man.
Yeah. Thanks, Claire.
So touching. Well, thank you. It's so moving. It's so beautiful. The love. I mean, the love is just so palpable. Yeah, it really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the beauty of death. Hey, it just shows us how much we love and what there is to lose.
Yeah.
And what's actually worth. tending to and appreciating.
Thanks, Lee.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. Just if any of you that are listening to this podcast want to be in touch with Lee, he is generously said you can reach out to him through his website, which is bluegumbushcraft.com.au, bluegumbushcraft.com.au. And he also has a podcast series of children's stories that's coming out, so we will look forward to that. And
yeah, thanks.
any closing thoughts you'd like to say?
No, thanks for the opportunity. It's really nice to talk about these things. I really appreciate the space that you're opening for us to have conversations about things that are real and get beneath the surface of things. So yeah, thank you, Claire.
All right, Lee, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Yeah.
We'll stay in touch. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Bye-bye.